Pierre.
Sorry.
Thanks, Pierre.
Sorry.
All right. Good evening. Thanks for coming on this hot and muggy evening. Once the rain came, then all the good weather came. So thanks for making it out. Just to give you sort of a preamble of what's going to happen here, we're going to have a presentation from Hamilton Police Services, and then we'll have a short presentation from Joe Imatter and his team, just to follow up on our last town hall. So before I screw everybody's name up, I'm just going to introduce one person's name who I can probably get right, and that's our Deputy Chief, Ryan Diodati. Did I get? I think perfect. Thank you.
They don't? Okay. Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for having us here this evening. It's our honor to be here in front of the community of Ward 14. It's something that we value, community input, and without you, we can't do our job effectively. I'm very proud to have our team here, led by Superintendent Sean Blay, Inspector Sabrina Fazer. We have our analyst here, Ethan Lindsay, and our crime manager, Sergeant Dave Elchin. They are the heart of Division 3. So Division 3 is the division in which Ward 14 is policed. And they are everything to you and your community. And they have the answers in terms of the challenges that Ward 14 has. And I'm very acutely aware of recent shooting in Ward 14 on Juanita. I was at the command post for that shooting. I know how an incident like that not only affects the people that are directly involved in that incident, but the whole community, and specifically the residents of Ward 14. That can have a very devastating effect on the sense of safety and security in your community, and I can tell you that we're committed to not only policing that particular incident. We continue to look for the second suspect. We have all available resources dedicated to that investigation, but also quality of life issues in your ward. And that's something that I know our team will speak to today. They will give you a brief overview of our priority response system, some of the challenges in Ward 14 in terms of the types of crimes that we're experiencing, and some of the initiatives that we have, all in support, again, of what we hear from our community and in support of our strategic plan that we've embarked on in 2023. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sergeant Dave Elchin to take you through his presentation. Thank you, and thank you for having us this evening.
Thank you, Deputy, and thank you, Councillor, for having us. As the Deputy said, my name is Dave Elchin. I am one of 2 crime managers for Division 3. We're just going to work through the slideshow here. If I get off topic, hopefully the Superintendent and Ethan and the Inspector will bring me back in here. So just quickly, an agenda for the slideshow. We're going to go over our role as a crime manager. What is a crime manager? I didn't know what it meant really until I got into the role and some years under my belt here. We'll go over the ward map and how it compares to our beat maps within the service. Priority response system, how we dispatch officers. Some crime stats, Ethan's going to take over that for me. How to report to the police. A little bit about our crisis response branch, MCERT, encampment engagement, social navigator, and our risk program. Crime prevention tips, and then at the end there'll be some Q&A, and there'll be some contact numbers for any follow-up or anything that comes afterwards that you want to chat about. So some housekeeping we'll go over, and we say that this at every town hall, just to kind of keep it on track. The town hall is intended to provide general information to the community members regarding how the HPS and divisional resources are utilized and how we're deployed. This is not the forum to discuss specific issues, neighbor troubles, etc. Potentially, we've run into this before where you want to talk about something and the other half of that is in the room. So we're here to prevent problems, not create them. And like I said, at the end, we'll provide some contact numbers. So the crime manager role, what do? I liaise with the community, I liaise with the councillor's office and patrol officers within the division. Depending on what's happening, specialized units within the service. Again, my goal is to know what's going on in the division and how best can we deploy the resources that we have. I work with the divisional crime analyst, Ethan, very closely. He sits right behind my desk. He reviews every report that comes in to the service daily and identifies identifies any crime trends and patterns. So when a trend is identified, crime series, etc., we work closely to determine what we need to do to address that and stop it. Division, how the city's broken up. It's broken up into 3 divisions. The length of roadway, just to give you a comparison, Division 1 polices 262 kilometers of roadway. Division 2 polices 772 kilometers of roadway. And Division 3 polices 1,972 kilometers. The above figures exclude provincial roadways 403 and QEW, etc. Division 3 is approximately 2.5 times more kilometers of roadway than Division 2 and 7.5 times more than Division 1. So the Ward 14, what does Ward 14 look like? You all live here, so I'm sure you know what the ward is. It's located in the far west of the mountain, Hamilton Mountain. It's bordered by the escarpment to the north, the hydro corridor to the south, Garth Street to the east, and the City of Hamilton municipal border to the west, extending beyond Scenic Drive into Ancaster and to the 403. Division 3 is responsible for policing 8 of the city's 15 total wards. Again, just to kind of give you an example of how big Division 3 is. Ward 14 broken down by beats. So the Hamilton Police Service breaks down the areas of the city into beats as opposed to wards. Beats are divided up differently than city wards. For example, Ward 14, and I don't know how clear it is, so probably the circle up in the top right of the screen there is the best example. Ward 14, outlined in gray, has 4 different beats that cover portions of Ward 14. Each of these beats has an officer assigned, but as you'll see from the map, those beats have different borders than the wards, and those officers also have portions of neighboring wards that they're responsible for. Though beat officers are assigned to their beats at the start of their shift, we say your beat 3238, for example, it doesn't necessarily mean that the officers are going to remain on beat 3238, and there's a high probability they're not going to be on 3238 their entire shift. They are dispatched based on the priority response system, which we'll get into, and that will take the officers out of their assigned beat. When officers are not doing a call for service, the expectation when we start parade at the start of every shift, the expectation is that when a beat officer has free time, that they're not on a call for service, that they're on their beat addressing beat-related issues, which is something that would come in through my office. Traffic complaints, speeding, warrants, things like that. Sorry. In addition to the 3 divisions, we also have the traffic safety unit. The traffic safety unit is responsible for traffic safety citywide. At full strength, the TSU is comprised of 18 officers who respond to and investigate motor vehicle collisions where there's a personal injury. Where there's not, we try and utilize the collision reporting center, so we're not tying officers up when we don't have to. These officers also conduct directed patrols in areas of high collision intersections. Enforcement of all HTA offenses in those areas create high visibility with the goal of correcting illegal driving behavior and reducing collisions. Daily, the TSU deploys enforcement cars, and they're based on collision data and problem areas within the city. I'm having an issue with my mouse here. Also under the traffic safety umbrella, we have collision reconstruction, so any serious personal injury or fatality, we have collision reconstruction, which is comprised of 5 detective constables. They also have the breath tech unit, which is staffed 24/7 with six breath techs. That's a struggle, I apologize. Those 6 breath techs are responsible for doing impaired tests. They're experts in alcohol, impaired driving, and drug recognition experts as well. So when they aren't doing tests and when they're not out doing paperwork and things related to arrests, the expectation is that they're out conducting traffic enforcement as well. As a crime manager, I use something called a beat book. So I put, for a beat, we'll use 3238 as an example because that's the beat that primarily has the largest portion of Ward 14. Let's say you call in and say, I'm having issues with motorcycles on Garth. racing up and down Garth. I would use a beat book to say on this date at this time I spoke with Mary and she said there's a problem, and I've also heard from Tom who had the same concern. So I would put that in a beat book and I would send that out to officers to say, hey, 2 complaints from citizens, here's the time, because I don't want them going at 6 a.m. if the problem's at 10 p.m., right? I want to use their time as wisely as we can. So that's kind of how that works. The traffic safety unit also gets bugged by me a lot because they work right across the hall. So they're a great resource. I'll use them. I'll use the breath text as often as I can. That takes us into Ward 14 stats. So I will pass it over to Ethan Lindsay here.
All right. Hi, everyone. So as mentioned, my name is Ethan Lindsay. I'm the crime analyst for Division 30. As a crime analyst with the Hamilton Police, I'm expected to maintain sort of a detailed understanding of crime throughout the whole division and specifically for Ward 14. So I'm going to be explaining some statistics to you. I'll try not to throw a bunch of numbers at you. I'll try to go and dive into sort of the context of what these numbers mean. And I'll also sort of explain what we as a service have done in response to these different increases that you'll see in the subsequent slides. So first I want to explain what a major crime indicator is. I think that's sort of important. It's an understanding that you should probably have. It is in the ward report. So a major crime indicator refers to a grouping or a categorization of occurrence types that when looked at as a whole provide us a picture of what crime looks like in a certain geographical area. So Ward 3 or Ward 14, Division 30. So the Hamilton Police Service, we look at 10 different MCIs or major crime indicators. 6 are included in the ward report, and so I'll be sort of diving into those in the subsequent slides. When our service looks at crime statistics for the ward report, we use 2 main measures. The first measure is how the count for a particular month compares to the 5-year monthly average. In the statistics presented on this screen, for instance, we are looking at the 6 major crime indicators in May 2024, so that is the last month for which we had a full month's worth of data. And we're seeing whether that crime indicator count is above, below, or equivalent to the 5-year monthly average. As you can see, assaults, auto thefts, and break-and enters were all up last month compared to the 5-year monthly average, whereas thefts from autos, sexual violations, and thefts over, they were all down. I'm not going to be diving into these specific numbers here. I'll do that in the next slide. Thanks. Could you hear anything I said before? Hopefully you could. Okay. So the second measure that our service looks at when preparing statistics for the ward reports is how the count of violent crime and property crime as broad groupings in a particular month compared to the 5-year monthly average. So here, instead of looking at the individual 5-year averages for auto theft, break and enter, and theft over, for instance, we've categorized them into a property crime grouping. And then later, when I examine this category as a whole, I'll break it down, I'll filter it, and I'll look at the individual occurrence types, right? So this is what I'll be doing on this slide. So we'll just dive right into it. So for break and enters, that might be of interest. So over the past year, in Ward 14, there was one break and enter to a church that was found to be part of a series of church break and enters that were happening throughout the division. Our break and enter unit investigated this occurrence as part of a project, and we arrested an individual, resulting in 28 criminal charges being laid. There were also 2 break and enters to apartment complexes in our ward, Ward 14, that through analytics we determined were part of a citywide series. The suspect for that was identified by myself, our criminal investigation division investigated, and the individual responsible was arrested by our heat unit. It is believed that 4 additional break and enters can be attributed to the same individual over the last year. So he was charged with 45 criminal charges, including fraud, failed to comply with probation, theft over, B&E, and mischief. There was also one break and enter to a home in Ward 14 that was believed to be part of a province-wide series based on the suspect description, the suspect vehicle, time of day, victimology, etc. So I was the lead analyst for that series, and I worked with police services across the province to identify the individuals responsible. They were charged and they were arrested. And so this group was charged with 33 break and enters that happened last year. There was also one residential break-and-enter in Ward 14 that was included in the pattern of residential break-and-enters that were occurring throughout the division. Our criminal investigation division, they followed up on this pattern. They're still following up. There is a detective assigned, and so that pattern is ongoing. There were also 4 residential break-and-enters that, through collaboration with other police services, was shown to be part of a series that was happening throughout Hamilton, Guelph, Wellington County, Waterloo Region, and Grimsby. So I, as well as members of our criminal investigation division, we communicated with investigators from across these jurisdictions, and we identified and arrested the parties responsible. And then there were also several break-and-enters to sheds and backyards in Ward 14. That is part of a general pattern that we're seeing citywide. Next, we'll talk very briefly about thefts of vehicles. So as you know, there is an auto theft crisis in Canada where certain vehicles, so Rams, Ford F-150s, Toyota Highlanders, etc., are being stolen and subsequently located either in shipping containers or overseas. Ward 14 over the past year did not experience a high number of thefts that would fall into this category. Most of the vehicles stolen from Ward 14 over the past year were not these types of vehicles that are significantly more likely to be stolen over others. 3 vehicles stolen from Ward 14 were crimes of opportunity, so the vehicle was left unattended and running, simply unlocked or locked with a key inside. Another was repossessed, so it was coded incorrectly as a theft. And 3 were attempted stolen and sustained some emission damage. Okay, next, thefts from vehicles. There were no noticeable patterns with respect to thefts from vehicles in Ward 14 over the past year. However, at least 10% of complainants that had their vehicles broken into stated that they'd left their vehicle unlocked. Over the past year, we have received complaints and seen video footage of suspects randomly walking around trying door handles, and if they come across a locked vehicle, they'll typically move on to the next vehicle. So even if your vehicle is parked in your driveway or in the street, it's always a good practice to keep the doors locked, to do a double check before you head to bed, because the majority of vehicle entries in Ward 14 are occurring overnight. Okay, violent crime. So we'll speak about assaults very briefly. In Ward 14, there were also a few noticeable patterns with respect to reported assaults over the past year. The majority of assaults were known unknown. So they involved current or former romantic partners, landlords and tenants, neighbors, friends, and children assaulting their parents as well as their classmates. One finding that was significant with respect to assaults, though, is that over the past year, we as a police service, we have seen an increase in the number of assaults involving youths with bear spray. We also saw a number of assaults involving individuals who are very well known to our service. In addition to assaults over the past year, we had 1 report of a firearm being discharged, though no victim was identified for that occurrence. Robbery. So there were several concerning robberies in Ward 14 over the last year as well. Those include a carjacking with a firearm, a robbery of a pharmacy, 3 robberies of convenience stores, a robbery with a knife, 3 robberies involving bear spray, and a home invasion. Of these 10 robberies I just mentioned, charges were laid in 3 occurrences. A youth suspect was identified as being responsible for 1. 2 occurrences involved victims who chose not to proceed with an investigation, and police had insufficient evidence to proceed with investigating the remaining 4 occurrences. And then lastly, I'll speak about thefts under $5,000. So one pattern that we saw in Ward 14 over the past year are thefts of complainants' wallets. All these thefts involved distraction, and all of the complainants in these cases were typically elderly females who were shopping at grocery stores or big box stores, so No Frills, Farm Boy, Dollarama, Food Basics. Unfortunately, this specific crime is not unique to Hamilton, and it has continued. The occurrences that have been reported to us involve complainants who were at big box stores and turned their backs very briefly and their wallet was stolen. We also had a number of thefts from unlocked lockers at the McNabb Rec Center, for which several offenders were identified. Our division liaised with our youth engagement team to focus on those responsible, and we put out a media release as well. Several arrests were made, and these types of thefts have occurred at McNabb Rec Center and other rec centers for the past 2 consecutive summers, and we are already seeing them happening this summer. So I would strongly suggest that if you do attend a rec center, that you lock up your valuables. All right, next slide. So speaking about 5-year trends, with respect to calls for service and collisions, in Ward 14, in Ward 14, our calls for service are down in comparison to the 5-year average. Our collisions are up in Ward 14 compared to the 5-year average. So it is important to note that these statistics, they excludes collisions that did not require a police officer attending the scene. Only those where an officer attended. So this slide compares violent and property crime statistics in May 2024 only to the 5-year monthly average. So just as the violent and property crime statistics in Ward 14 in 2023 were higher than the 5-year average, which you might recall from 2 slides previous, the violent and property crime statistics in Ward 14 in May 2024 were too higher than the 5-year average. So to illustrate this, you can see on the far right side of the screen that there were only a few instances where the trend line for violent and property crime dropped below the monthly average. And then lastly for me, I'm going to speak briefly about traffic enforcement in Division 30. So the statistics on the screen contain data from all of Division 30, not just Ward 14. Currently our traffic dashboard doesn't have the functionality to filter down to a specific ward for traffic enforcement. A higher percentage of traffic tickets issued by Division 30 members have been for hazardous violations. So that is speeding, disobeying a light or a sign, careless driving, distracted driving, etc., as opposed to non-hazardous violations. The majority of our traffic tickets were for speeding violations. And the total number of traffic tickets and provincial offense notices that we as a division issued year to date are down compared to the same period last year, while the number of Part 3s and licenses suspended are up. That is it for me. I'll pass it back to Dave.
Thank you, Ethan. Ethan is much smarter than I am, and I'm very grateful for him. He touched on one thing there. Over the past 2 summers, we've seen a spike at rec centers, vehicle thefts, where lockers aren't being locked. At no point are we trying to blame any victims where, you know, you may go for a quick workout, you forget to lock your locker. We're aware of it. So that's something Ethan and I have already spoken about, where we saw a couple already. And then it's over to me to say, what can we do about it? So we have resources within the division where we say, pay special attention. Here's what we saw last year. Here are the known offenders we know about, and what can we do proactively to try and prevent that from happening again. So we're by no means just saying, we know these happen and here comes another summer, right? So just to clarify. We'll go through this quickly. I suspect everybody knows if you need the police in an emergency, 911 is the number to call. The non-emergency number is up here, but it will be up at the end. And like I said, the contact number for myself and the aggressive driver hotline, which is always a popular one, will be up on the screen at the end. So when you call 911, for anybody that hasn't done it, everything is routed based on your location. So if you're within the city of Hamilton, we are responsible for that. You will be put through to our communications center first. They will answer, they say police, fire, ambulance. If you say, I need fire and ambulance, our communications operators will transfer over to fire and ambulance, who will obtain details, who will then see if there's a police response needed in addition to fire and EMS. If it's a disturbance, we're coming right off the hop, and then EMS and fire will be triaged based on what happens. What happens when you call the non-emergency line? It goes to the same operators, just in a lower priority sequence. So a lot of times, because our communications room is very busy, you will receive an automated voice message to say our communications operators are busy. Please remain on the line. It's not because we don't care about your call, it's just because the 911 calls take the priority. Reporting crimes. Obviously, you can call into communication depending on the nature. If and the information shared, sometimes you can do a report right over the phone with an officer. It will take time. It's not something that, you know, if your shed was broken into last night and you want to talk to an officer, unfortunately, it will be put in a priority sequence and officers will respond as they're able. And like I said, we'll talk about priority response in a few slides here. You also have the option to go into the mountain station or any police station and speak with an officer at the front desk or report online. So reporting online has become increasingly popular. So there's some criteria. This is just kind of how to navigate our website. Again, if you're ever having any questions, my card's at the back. By all means, call and I'll help navigate it. To report online, the incident must have occurred within Hamilton. Not all reports can be made online. Some must be reported in person. The incident cannot involve lost or stolen license plates or stolen passports. And you must have a valid email address to report online so we can follow up with you. Things like break and enters can be reported online. This would be a break and enter to a shed, not a residence or a commercial property where there's potential forensic evidence that we want to come in and look into. Damage to property, damage to vehicle, fraud, hate crime, lost property, theft from vehicle, hate bias motivated crime, sexual assault, shoplifting, or a gas drive-off. Again, this is a report. It's not necessarily once you make the report, there's no follow-up. It's the initial information, and then depending on the nature of what's reported, an officer would likely follow up. So this will speak a little bit about our crisis response branch, and I believe the superintendent is going to speak to this. Sir?
I'm afraid it's, okay, great. It's not going to be too loud because I'm a lot shorter to the mic than these two guys. COAST, Crisis Outreach and Support Team, we created that in 1997, and basically it was in response to recognizing that police, and this was obviously 27 years ago, are not always the best resource. We're trying to find the right resource at the right time for people. So we partnered with St. Joe's Hospital, and they've been tremendous partners with us since then. To provide mental health workers that would be partnered up with an officer. And it's transitioned over the years because the division has grown, where we have multiple assets that we actually deploy. And we've had numerous police agencies from around the world actually come to Hamilton to sort of see how we run our crisis response branch. So the Australian National Police, services from the UK, the United States, the RCMP. But COAST was kind of the baby of it all, and we still do deploy 2 COAST officers. Primarily, it's more of a response to something that isn't 911. It's not acute. They will attend and do house visits and follow-ups and deal with people that do have struggles, whether it be with mental illness or like intersectionality of drug addiction, etc., but they're not in crisis. It's not acute at that time. Mobile Crisis Rapid Response, that was created in response to an increase in calls for service where members of the public were having issues where they may be in crisis. They might be acting in such a way that would alarm the community. The community may call 911. And what we wanted to ensure was that we had officers that were specially trained and partnered with mental health workers to better understand what the issues were that these individuals are going through. These people, the mental health teams, the officers themselves are trained in crisis intervention techniques, which is a program that we are trying to train all of our frontline officers on. So even if they're not partnered with a mental health social worker or nurse and working in an MCERT capacity, if they're the first responder, they still have a lot of training. It's a weeks-long course on how to respond and try to de-escalate and defuse that situation. In the end, it's also benefited us in a multitude of ways. It's helped defer these calls from the front line. Once again, the right resources at the right time. But you have professionals making the determination, is this person apprehendable? Are they suicidal? Are they a risk to themselves or others? And we found that while our apprehensions dropped from 75% to about 16% this year, the number of times that the doctors at the hospital, so when we apprehend them, we have to take them to a hospital, the doctors at that hospital that will form them and keep them in for assessment and treatment, they're more likely to keep them. So we're finding out that the apprehensions we make are the right call and they're getting the right help rather than arrested way back in the day. Social Navigator, also a program, I think it was 2011, and once again a response to an increase that we saw back 13 years ago to homelessness, addictions, mental health, trying to find officers that would work with EMS as their partners. Once again, a very strong partnership is Hamilton EMS. And these officers are basically, we've identified them differently now with the placard on the front of their vest to say Social Navigator. And you'll see in the community when our unhoused and many of our people, they're very close with them. They know who they are. They have relationships. They actually seek them out for assistance. So that's called our Social Navigator program, and we've recently expanded that with some grant funding. So we now have a total of 5, and I believe it's 2 youth and 3 adult. And then EMS obviously provides us enough of their paramedics to support them. So they'll drive these individuals to meetings, get them assistance, whether it be simply to confirm their identity so they can get like disability checks, or make sure that they get to meetings for therapies, make sure they get their medicines, drop off water, things like that. And that also then has expanded further to RIST, which is I think 2 years old now, Rapid Intervention and Support Team. And here we've partnered with all of these agencies. I don't want to leave any out, so I'll actually read them. It's obviously Hamilton Paramedics, St. Joseph's Healthcare, the Canadian Mental Health Association of Hamilton, Hamilton Regional Indian Centre, the YMCA, Interval House of Hamilton, the John Howard Society, and Wesley Urban Ministries. So these individuals, they all work at a central station, very close with the Crisis Response Branch, the Social Navigator program. And they work every day. They meet, they discuss their clients, and they go out and they provide engagement, assistance. They try to find them housing, whether it be assistance through therapy or counseling. And they're finding that there's, once more, a lot of trust, because it's not officers that are meeting with them. In most cases, it's these individuals that work for these agencies that are going out and just meeting with individuals in the community privately. And then also fairly recent is the encampment engagement teams. So with the protocol that the city has created, they did approach us about ensuring the safety of the municipal law enforcement officers as well as city outreach. So these individuals will go to the encampments. They work closely with RIST, with Social Navigator, and with city assets to meet with these individuals regularly. And if an encampment isn't non-compliant with the protocol, then if there is an order to vacate issued, the police are there just to provide public safety. It could be that they're meeting with somebody that's new, and it could be an agency looking just to make sure that their safety officers will go with them as well. And that's the role of the officers for MCERT and Coast, is the mental health workers. They definitely need us there in the event that the person that is suffering becomes violent or unpredictable. So. And then finally, all of these programs, we were lucky enough a few years ago to receive a grant from the province. So we've actually been able to divert funds to make some of this happen. For example, RIST, those agencies are receiving $1.5 million through the grant. We basically are just channeling it to them over the 3-year period, which helps pay for the positions to ensure that we can continue to run that program. And back to you.
So now we'll go into the priority response system. Touched on it a number of times here. What is it? And essentially it's how we deploy officers. How do we determine where officers are going? What we hear about a lot, especially in my office, I'm sure the superintendent inspector as well, we never see the police, where are the police, etc. So again, as an example, that 3238 beat officer that's assigned to work in a portion of Ward 14 might be pulled over to Ward 6 or Ward 7 for an emergency. So to kind of break it down, a priority 0 is an emergency event. You know, something is active, somebody's actively being hurt. We're going to find the officers to go to stop that person from being hurt. Priority 1 would be something in progress. The goal is to dispatch within 3 minutes. Priority 2 would be something that's just occurred, a theft that's just occurred where the suspect might still be in the area. We want to catch them while they're there. The goal is within 15 minutes. Priority 3, the goal is 60 minutes, so that could be a theft report or something along those lines, a lower priority. And then your priority 4 would be a 3-hour dispatch time. Priority 5 and 6 would be something administrative where officers have paperwork and things like that to take care of. We don't really assign an hour. They fit it in when they can. So again, just as there's more examples here, an emergency, something like a shooting or a domestic in progress where people are potentially actively being hurt. Priority 1, a robbery or break-and-enter in progress. Maybe a robbery, if it's in progress, is something we're going to fairly quickly. Anything in progress where it's like we're sending officers there. And prior to this, I worked as a patrol sergeant, and what you'd hear is we need units to clear for something on the go. And we're finding officers to go to these priority calls. That will lead us into some crime prevention tips. Again, not to put any blame here, but where we can prevent crime, we want to do that. Vehicles, Ethan had touched on, we've had an issue with high target vehicle thefts in the city and vehicle entries we hear about quite regularly in the office. Do your best to keep vehicles locked. I am guilty of it myself, where sometimes I'm running in the house with the kids and I forget to lock the cars and somebody's gone through my car overnight. It's not a nice feeling, but it's a stark reminder to myself to lock the car the next day. So don't leave anything valuable inside your car, personal ID, things like that. My buddy still leaves his wallet in the car, and I yell at him every time I see it sitting in there because he doesn't think it's going to happen to him. Invest in things like anti-theft devices. What's old is new here. some of the new technology we're seeing, and I'm not an expert, I don't steal vehicles, but the club, we used to talk about it years and years ago. We've seen it become effective now. If possible, if you have the ability, a car parked in a garage is a great option. I know not everybody has that option. And in speaking with our break, enter, and auto teams, what they're suggesting, and insurance companies are highly recommending this as well as a third-party aftermarket GPS. I think there's something called a tag system. I don't get paid by tag, I don't get kickbacks, but I understand it's quite effective in recovering vehicles that they've been stolen. Homes, very similar, lock windows and doors at all times, including when you're in the house. Change your passcodes, don't just rely on the one that you've used for 40 years and the numbers are all worn down on your garage entry code. Don't announce on social media if you're going on vacation, and let people know that your house is going to be vacant for a number of days. And if you go away for an extended period of time, do your best to make your house look lived in. Lights on timers and things like that. Let neighbors know, trusted neighbors know. And lastly, I don't know if you want to take a picture of this. My card's out on the desk out there with my number. So myself and my partner Tim are on the top left. The non-emergency phone number is there. The traffic safety unit phone number, and then the aggressive driver's hotline. That concludes the PowerPoint portion of our presentation. Are there any questions? Sir, are you okay with some questions, or do you want me to get out of here?
I don't know. I'm sure there might be some questions here, so if anybody has any questions, please.
Again, if there's anything after, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So I know one of the things that's come up is the budget. Always the budget. So I don't think you guys have a big enough budget, especially for the area you are expected to cover. It seems like Hamilton's getting bigger and bigger. We are almost touching 12. So if you could pick your budget and say, hey, we need this much more, is there a number that you'd say, look, this is what we need going forward?
I'll defer. I'll defer.
We're interested to know, like, you know, it's really effective. We see guys struggling, you know, and there's more crime downtown. We've got gangs going on down there. I know Boxford jail's full of them. Right, so you guys need more money and more equipment, but what do you want?
Thank you for your question, and thank you for the support. We're embarking on our 2025 budget now as we speak, so we're meeting with all our stakeholders, our divisional commanders, just to see what that need is. I can tell you we're looking for every opportunity to keep our budget respectful for the community, fully understanding your taxpayers and its difficult times. To answer your question, what do we need? There's a number of challenges. We're continually looking for ways that we can divest ourselves of some of our responsibilities, looking for partnerships. As Superintendent Blay mentioned, we were able to get a grant for $1.6 million, which we've been able to share with some of our other community agencies, which again, we're putting the right services at the right time for the right people that we're dealing with. So as we continue to look for efficiencies, we have to be mindful of some of the staffing issues that we have. We have a number of staffing issues due to a number of factors. WSIB legislation, presumptive post-traumatic stress disorder. A number of our officers are exposed to things on a daily basis that the normal person just doesn't see. Think of your own experiences and some of the things that you may have encountered during your daily lives. Our officers are seeing these things day in and day out. Suicides, domestic violence. It's an epidemic in our city, and they're seeing this every day, and they're dealing with these societal issues that, again, it takes a toll on our officers. So we're continuing to look at ways to be preventative and be proactive in you know, allowing our officers to be resilient when dealing with this, but also understanding that you know, sometimes these officers need to take a step away from the job for their own wellness. So that's one of the challenges. As you mentioned, Sergeant Elchin went through the priority response system, and you talk about the vast geography of especially Division 3 with 1,972 kilometers. Just a question to the audience here, for 1,972 kilometers, how many police officers do you think would be responsible for policing that area? And we use 12-hour shifts, so in a 12-hour time period, how many officers do you think would be responsible for policing that area? Think of all the nooks and crannies pardon me? Well, that's a fair question, but we strive. There are collective agreement arrangements that we have that we adhere to, but what would be a number that you would think?
Well, first of all, we all recognize there isn't enough.
Okay.
It's not enough. I think it's like 2.
Well, there's more than 2. Not just for Ward 14, for Division 3.
But anyone who walks or runs or drives around hardly ever sees an officer unless there's a problem. Which suggests to me and probably everybody else, we don't have enough officers. So if we have 10 in your area, you probably need double that.
Yeah. Well, we're usually between 18 and 20. But again, keep in mind with the priority response system, if we have an intimate violence call, that ties up 2 officers. The number of shootings that we have, special attentions, any type of call usually takes 2 officers, so they can get tied up very quickly. And the paperwork that is required to be completed with these calls, takes sometimes 4, 6, 8 hours to complete. So our officers can get tied up very quickly and not allowing for that proactive. And that's what we're looking to do, is trying to look for opportunities where our officers can be engaged in proactive patrols rather than reactive. We do a much better job when we're being proactive. And one of the things that obviously that we're dealing with now is the prevalence of shootings, and someone had mentioned gangs. Our shootings are at 28 now. It's a sharp increase. These are some of our most heinous crimes that often result in homicides. So anytime we want to look after a particular problem, such as shootings, gang member activity, stolen autos, which is something that we're dealing with, it takes resources. So in order to address these issues, we often have to take resources from another area. And therefore, it was mentioned about our HEAT team, the High Enforcement Action Team. That team is primarily focused on quality of life issues, break and enters, low-level drug dealers, that type of thing, but we often call on them to join our shooting response team, to join our combat auto theft team. So when they're doing that, they can't do those quality of life issues. So it's a juggling act, it's a balancing act. All to answer your question about the budget, that again, we look for every efficiency that we can. We're responsible in looking at where we can cut, where we can add, and where our priorities are. I can tell you that Councillor Spadafora is a great advocate for your ward in terms of getting more police into his ward. Again, I mentioned it earlier with the Juanita shooting. I was in constant contact with the councillor in terms of what we were doing, and he certainly was sharing the angst of the community in light of that shooting, and what we could do to again bring the residents of Ward 14 down. We did provide some further policing at the daycare, which was right across the street from the policing. We brought our mounted patrol unit there as well to reassure the children, to reassure the parents there that the police were there. But as mentioned, we can't be everywhere all the time. We look for strategic approaches to policing in terms of our deployment, whether that be traffic enforcement, whether that be special attentions. So we'll continue to look for those opportunities as we prepare our 2025 budget.
But you're going to ask for a bit more. You should. Like you should be. I get it.
I think that's the only thing I wanted to mention. So the one question that was asked was how many police officers. So even if we had, let's say, 10, that's around 200 kilometers per officer.
They're never seeing all that road in a day. Give me the
So
car.
just to give you, I don't believe we have 20. So I don't think we have 20 on, right? We don't have 20? How many do we have?
I don't know if we should.
We don't want to?
Yeah, we're between 18 and 20.
Yeah.
18 and 20.
I can tell you, so I'm not from Hamilton, but when I was a kid, it would be a big day. We'd come to Lime Ridge Mall. And I'll date myself, I'm over 50. And back in the day, there was no housing between Brantford and pretty much Lime Ridge Mall. And if you consider the population growth, we are policing it with less now than we were 20 years ago. Because we used to have more than our minimums. But now due to long-term illnesses and just staffing challenges as a result of unexpected resignations, things like that, the chief has a great plan. We are working very hard and we are hiring a lot of recruits, but we just can't hire them as fast as we need them. So we know that you don't see police. We've asked the police, especially in the outlying beats, if they have a report, please stay in your car, find a very visible parking lot. But then we get a complaint that the officer is just sitting around doing nothing. But he's doing, a few hours of paperwork. He might not have an arrest. She might not have an arrest, but they do have a report. And we do great work. Like, we had a 25-year veteran and a brand new recruit arrest one of those shooters at Juanita that day. And that is going to result in hours of paperwork to ensure that there's a conviction. Because there's a huge need now, because of case law, evidentiary requirements, what everybody expects of us, and we expect it. We expect nothing but quality service. And the officers, unfortunately, have to spend time doing that, and that takes them away from the road. We recognize it. We field the calls all the time. So we try to do what we can by, pick a parking lot and do your report there. But, yes, sir.
If and when you have personnel, it would be nice if the officers had time just to do drive-by through the subdivisions, because anyone who lives in the ward that we're in recognize that most of the speeders, most of the people who don't stop live in the area. So
Yeah.
I think if a cruiser came by once in a while, it would play like once every other day. Just hey, guess what? I made it cost. Just driving around.
The issue is they may actually be there, but who sees them? Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. But that would be a great officer.
Yeah.
So you know your neighbor, Bob, that always speeds, that neighbor of yours that's always...
Hey, you behave yourself. You're coming up for election.
But we do hear you, and this is what Dave is regularly doing, is asking our beat officers.
We understand that,
Yeah.
and we know we have a shortage of
Yeah.
personnel.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think
sir.
one of the big problem in that area is that, as Bob says, a lot of people live in the neighborhood, but they don't respect the neighborhood. I'm right at the crosswalk where, it's not a crosswalk, it's a corner, where there's the leak, under the leak, the kids go to bring that crossing walk, and they go right through, students don't look, they go right through the
It's like
crosswalk.
a T intersection, right?
And people don't stop at the stop sign.
They do not.
No, you can put 7 cars out of 10 will go right through.
And as an example, sir, community complaint like that, I want officers there. We want to send officers there. I'll give you an example. I came in today, we had the office staffed on Friday, and I came into 13 or 14 voicemails, all of, I have this stop sign, I have this stop sign, I have that, right? So when we think back to our minimums and bugging the traffic safety, but they're deployed strategically to try and save lives, right? So cars aren't stopping at this stop sign, someone's going to die, it's only a matter of time. I heard that 13 or 14 times just in the span of Saturday, Sunday, right? So it's just trying to, and that's when I talk about as much detail as you can. So the problems are at 11 p.m. Well, that's good, because then I can say from 11 to 12, we'll try and get people there, right? And you're not going to see them all the time, right? Because that's not the reality. We can't do that. But
I go out at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, I go get gas, the car speed right through the stop sign. I know there's nobody out at that time.
it doesn't make it okay.
No, it doesn't make it okay. Yeah.
What happens if one of us took a video on our phone of the car going through the license plate?
So-
Be able to act on that?
And this is something that comes up, right? The issue is follow-up, right? So yes, it's something that we could look into. What I don't want is people jumping out, and I see this a lot.
So just think of it this way, okay? Because we all know that there's traffic cameras all over the place. Great idea. But if you had a simple thing like a ring doorbell on the back, in your tree, pointing the right way, recording those activities, getting all those license plates, and you send a note, oh, you're charged, send a note, you were caught.
So our
Sorry, go ahead.
Our aggressive driving hotline does that. If you call the aggressive driving hotline with the license plate, then our officers from the traffic branch will run the plate, find out who the RO is, maybe not the operator, which is why we couldn't lay the charge. The the automated speed enforcement cameras have a different legislation attached to them. We would send a letter or an email to that family, and let's say it's the son or the daughter driving mom and dad's car, then maybe that puts a stop to it. Also, sir, if you do notify Dave, it's not just patrol officers that we could ask to go. It's the traffic safety unit. In my previous position last year, for a few years, I was in community safety, which had the traffic safety branch there, and we tried to make a concerted effort to go through analytics and hit the top 20 intersections, and then we would patrol those corridors, knowing that hopefully our presence would be just one factor. We work closely with the city traffic division, with Mike Fields and Chris Day, and they have, you know, speed calming measures that they'll deal with. Whenever there's a serious collision, they'll meet with the staff sergeant of at that unit to talk about the road design. Would speed bumps help? Would different type of lighting? Or the issue with the stop signs is we'll put a cruiser there, and half the person sees the cruiser, and then they stop. So we have tried that as well, but not to say that we wouldn't. Dave would definitely send that email to the traffic safety unit, but they're responsible for the 3,000 kilometers of roadway in the city.
I'm thinking technology wise, right? Ring doorbell, relatively simple compared to the traffic.
Yeah.
You put a little box out saying this is a ring doorbell, one of the things with a sign out, and you just move them around, very cheap. Doesn't take police services or activity, cars, police officers, whatever, keep your budget down. But if people start realizing that that would be there, they're caught, occasionally, no charges will get you saying, I bet you have a really cool and alleviate that situation very, very quickly.
The only concern that you would have there is privacy, for one. So there's a bunch of legislation. Sorry, sir?
That's why I say pointing at the road.
Which you're actually not supposed to be allowed to do. It's supposed to cover your property only. And if the city was to, there is a lot of legislation, because we have discussed, there is technology that you can put on streetlights that have cameras that measure sound and measure speed. And other municipalities do deploy them. There's a lot of legislative concerns that you have to overcome, and I think city legal would need to look into all of that before we started. But not to say, like, whenever there's we recently arrested an individual for the sexual assault at 20 Place, and our officers were there for 2 to 3 days canvassing every residence for video. So it's not that we won't ask you for your surveillance footage, but to put one on a stop sign or something that's monitoring a private area. And then we also have to make an identity on the driver to lay a charge.
So I do have one other question for statistician over there. Okay? So seeing that you got 5 years, statistics we're seeing it go up. Okay? Have you done a projection of what that will turn into next year if nothing changes?
I don't think I could make a projection based on just what historically we're looking at. It would be total conjecture. So
it's hard, I understand, but saying if nothing changes, based on if we are seeing an upward trend, logic says that it's going to get worse before it gets better, and things don't change. Right? So that, again, is more onus to say, what do we have to do to get around this?
I know Ethan can't tell you, and neither could I, but we have seen, if you look at the 5-year trend, that there's increases and then there's declines.
Yep.
So we could see a decline again and then another increase. I know, so we're not here to create fear and panic.
No. But I'm just saying, that gives more onus to our councillor here to say, look, we don't make changes. This is the projection of what could happen, right? And it gives more priority again to helping you guys get what we need to do the job.
Yes, sir.
That's all I'm doing. Okay? When it comes back to Mike here now, is that in council, do we have in a budget a priority system that says the basic services of police, fire, ambulances, etc., get the majority of the money and making sure they can do their job before anything lower priority comes in? I don't need it in that percentage, but our basic functionality that the city should be doing, fixing our roads, right, are taking priority before we get into the soft spectrum.
Yeah, I think when we talk about the police budget, it's a tricky one, because really the city council's direction is yes or no. So the chief's going to bring us the budget, we get to say yes, or we get to say no. We get to say, hey, send it back, or we change it. We can't get into the line item with, hey, listen, we want to give you this, and we want you to do this with the money. We don't get into operations. So we will agree on, hey, we need $100 million. It's either a yes or it's a no. Or it's a go back and come back with $80 million, because we don't want to spend 100. And then they say, well, no, it's 100 or, and then it goes to a different body. Provincially, that will make the decision as to what the budget of the police will be. So we technically don't have any say. Yes or no is really what we can do.
I understand that. That's not the question. The question is that priority-wise, where the money's spent. I mean soft guidance, right?
Inside the police budget?
No, I mean as a city budget as a whole.
Okay.
There's basic functionality that we need, right? Then there's semi-functionality that is wanted, that we should be doing, like maybe putting money to get extra jobs in the city or whatever, right? Then there could be nice to have that says, well, we want to paint this sidewalk over here for some unknown reason. Really doesn't have what looks nice, right? We should be, in my mind, making sure that the first priority is spent first, totally, no yes or no, totally, before we even start looking at other items. Because we need the police, we need the fire department, we need the ambulance, we need our road fixed, we need the proper garbage collection, which is pretty good, right? We need those basics to make the city run. First. Then if there's any money left over after that, then you can start talking about other stuff.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. And a lot of the stuff you're talking about is legislative. So when we talk about EMS, we talk about fire, that's all legislative positions, and there are priorities of the police is a priority. When we get into the City of Hamilton controlled council budget, that's where we need to, and I said a few weeks ago at one of our committee meetings, I can't remember which one, was that instead of finding new ways to generate tax revenue, we got to find new ways to save money, pause projects, and find efficiencies. Now's not the time to go and spend money on maybe what we would like. And I'm not saying we can't get those things.
Maybe like the bike lane going up.
We're not going to get into specifics. We're going to we'll have a budget town hall one day. But I hear you. You know, for me, I support police every day because I don't know if I call it a luxury, but I get to discuss with them what happens in the war in detail. And I can tell you now, you can agree with me, not agree with me, vote for me, vote not for me. I will never not support it.
Like if you look at
It's not going to happen. Right? So, but I understand what you're saying about the budget, and I'm with you. We definitely need to find ways to afford to have 6%, 7%
One of the
increase.
highest tax cities, municipalities in North America. It's got to stop.
I voted against the last two. So.
right, anyone who got their tax.
Oh, is that your tax bill?
No, I won't now. But no, here's one thing.
He's not paying enough.
Bill. Anyway, when I look at the levies,
Yep.
the police is the same as transit. Come on. The police should be a hell of a lot higher than the transit.
Lower, we don't.
No, the levy for policing should be higher, my opinion, versus transit. Especially in our ward, because we don't use a lot of buses up in our ward.
Yeah, and again, I'm not here to say what needs more money and what doesn't. And I hear what you're saying, and I can tell you I'll support the police because we need them. We can say, well, maybe they cost too much. Maybe we can find efficiencies in the police budget, which is what I'll get. I can tell you right now, during budget time, I will get asked, why are you looking for efficiencies in our city budget and not our police budget? Well, if we're talking about the specific wants, and we're talking about life and death, you're not going to cut budget on life and death, but we might cut budget on something that, and when I say cut, it's not even cut, it's delay. Let's delay a project for a year or two. A project that is more of a want than a need. So again, for me, I've been clear from the day I started running. It was on my pamphlet up until, I supported both budgets for the police. I never asked for it to go back. I trust the chief that when he brings a budget forward, it's the budget he needs to try to do the best job he can. And I think, as you said, they could probably use more money, but the chief is also cognizant of the fact that we don't have an abundance of money from taxpayers to just say, hey, give me $400 million, we'll figure out what we're going to do with it. I think he's responsible to know that times are tough right now, and they're going to try to do their absolute best for us with the money and budget that they asked for. Did you have a, oh no, I thought I seen a hand up. Go ahead.
I want to know one thing. The turning lanes on these roads, how far do you need to turn to go into the turning lane? Because I see people going about 2 kilometers down in the middle lane because there's parked cars, like the cars are stopped. Like, normally I go about 100 feet before I get to the street, I go to the turning lane. But a couple of times I look in my mirror, this guy's coming from way back there.
Yeah, the driver behavior is the biggest issue.
What would it be, like, you know, if I get it? Like, these things, like, really bother me because lately I've seen it a lot. Like, you know, before, when you get to near your street and you put your single line and you turn. But now, I've seen it on Stone Church, from Upper Wentworth to Upper Wellington. The guy just got in the turning lane and go all the way to Wellington.
I consider when they go up to the side, I've seen them going up on the side. But I even had one bad one this morning, right at Upper Paradise in Mohawk. He stopped, light was red, I was waiting for it, I wanted to turn right, but guy came up on the turn lane to turn left, just went right around me and turned right. Right from it. Didn't even stop, didn't even walk left.
Driver behavior is something, unfortunately, we don't, as police, we don't have, everything's different. So they'd come investigate and then they would make a decision, but it would probably be your fault, Pat. I'm just joking.
Is that because of nationality?
They put the bike lane there.
Yep.
And then people turn around and go through the gas station instead. Yeah. They got no way to go to the same gas station. Make it even more danger. Then, you know, it's a lot of money that could be spent to help the police officers instead of putting them.
Yep. I see. I'll go to you and then, yeah, you go ahead and then I'll.
Okay. I heard you guys talking about divesting police resources to these other groups, I don't know what you want to call them, crisis groups, and also WSIB cases going on, police officers have to go. Is that because society changes, are saying that you have to invest less in police and more into these society areas so police don't feel they've got the public's reassurance that you're caught on camera doing something quite shouldn't do? So these people saying, you know, I'm out, I think my long-term disability because of this one issue that 5 years ago no one would bat an eyelid at, and now it's becoming more and more difficult to do your job. Is there that fear? And when money is being separated to these groups, you're saying how good it is, which I'm not saying it's not good, but you're, we can't answer this, but doing it because people say this is what we should do and this is what's right, when actually the money should be kept to the police. You get the people off the street. I mean, this is going a bit long-winded, but we've town for 2 years. I've seen someone executed in the streets. I've seen now this happening here, because I've worked at Jackson Square, I saw that 19-year-old kid getting shot. Like, it's crazy. So should more money obviously go to the police, number one, and number two, do you guys feel you're empowered to actually do your job without fear of repercussion because someone has a phone and you put your gun too soon or something like that?
Thank you for your question. Quite an in-depth question. So to answer your first question, just in terms of, we've been asked a couple of times, do we have enough money? That's a real difficult question to answer. Under the Act, we have to provide adequate and effective policing to the community that we serve. How do you define adequate and effective policing? I would suggest that if there's 25 people in this room, you would all have a different definition of what that looks like. So when we're putting our budget together, we have collective agreement pressures that before we buy one paperclip, we're usually around 4% for collective agreement pressures. So that's just 90% of our budget is staffing pressures in terms of benefits, pay, etc. So that leaves 10%. There's things that are legislated that we must do, so that eats up into that 10%. So there's not a lot of fat on the bone, if you will, when we're looking at things that we would like to have. In terms of the question you asked and the pressures of policing, we often say that policing is messy, and it certainly is messy. We certainly want to be cognizant of what our community expects of us. Sir Robert Peel, many years ago, talked about the police are the people and the people are the police. We depend on our community members to assist us in doing the job that we do. It's well entrenched in our strategic plan. So we're always looking for those priorities, those opportunities to work with other agencies, as Superintendent Blaze said earlier, where they can assist us to do our job, or we can assist them to do their job. We look for those partnerships, and when there's an opportunity for us to do a pass-off, we're more than willing to do that so that we can get back to the core principles very clearly laid out in the Act and what we're responsible for. I've been a police officer for 27 years. I can tell you, when I started, if we were to get a gun off the street, that was something that it would be talked about throughout the city, that we recovered a gun. I can tell you now, almost on a daily basis, we're recovering guns, whether that be through traffic stops, whether that be attending neighbor troubles, you name it, guns are out there, and we're seeing that in the number of shootings, in the rise in shootings, and that's something that we have to take very seriously. So I don't know if I've answered all your questions. If I've missed one part, please remind me and I'll try my best.
Just one little extra, do you individuals as police officers, do you have fear of doing your job or properly without being repercussion from, as I said, a member of the public saying, you shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that, or someone puts a camera in your face? Because the more we see online, that sort of stuff, which I think is not good and shouldn't happen. And is that why more policemen aren't joining the force? Because they feel like if I do something, I could get repercussions, I could potentially go to prison because I do something maybe incorrect or perceived incorrect. So I mean, you guys have been doing this for a long time, so I can't imagine with camera phones or what have you. That must be a pressure that you guys have to take.
Sure. Again, a fair question. I can tell you the profession of policing is a profession that has probably more oversight, and I would suggest, than doctors have, than lawyers have, the dentists have, the teachers have. So there are a number of oversight bodies. It's reality now that cameras are everywhere. In terms of that accountability, we've taken steps with our in-car cameras that our frontline cruisers are equipped with now. So in terms of recordings, the cruisers are all now mic'd up. So anytime that we have someone who's in our cruiser, automatically triggers the camera, it's audio recorded. And we are coming to the board, and we've brought it to the board a number of times for body-worn cameras. We speak often about accountability and transparency. Body-worn cameras is something that our police association certainly supports for the members of our service. We've heard from our community that they would like body-worn cameras, not all community, but most of the community. And that's something, again, as a service that we're striving to enhance our accountability and our transparency. And we think body-worn cameras is something that will assist us in doing that.
Hold on, Pierre. We had a question.
Just a question. I think we need more police for sure, especially when you see that map and for what you have to cover, just for the safety of an officer, not even just for us. You guys are going to calls, but that's pretty short. That's a big map. Also, I live on Gilderwood Addis area, and I don't know if you've been told, I've been meaning to call, I never do. I hear it all the time. The link is a motorcycle raceway almost every freaking night. And I always wait to hear for that crash. And it's like, but it's hard to nail down time because, you know, it's 11 o'clock one night and it's 1 a.m. the other night.
So I would recommend that we take a lot of these intersection-specific things over a phone call.
For sure.
Like I said, my number's back there, but as an example, some of those, I sent out 3 locations today.
Yeah. For
this street is being used as a raceway between 12 and 4, right? So
I mean,
again,
it'd be hard to catch them.
share with me, and I will certainly share it, and we'll get officers there as we can.
We've actually taken steps with people complaining about specific, like at a time, you can tell he's going to work.
It kind of helps narrow it.
And we had officers come in and actually follow him, find out where he lives, and then waited for the next time. And we did a speed relay on the lake on Sunday, and I think they issued 25 provincial offenses.
Yeah,
so they know it's
on the lake, which is great.
Pierre?
My
You don't want to talk to me? You want to talk?
My question is just a curiosity as well, is that it always kind of disturbs or disturbs when I hear an officer suspended with pay. When you know you're asking for more money, you need more money, and then you get an officer that's suspended with pay. I know that I had a cousin who was a detective on the exact science one, 90%, 99% of the officers, they're all good officers, right? But you could get a rotten one, just like a rotten doctor or a rotten anything else, right? But to define a suspended with pay, just served about 3 years, he's been still being paid. Come on, I mean, that's a lot of money that you could hire another officer.
That's a great question and a great observation, and I can tell you that's something that is or was in the Police Services Act. In April of this year, we've now started the Community Safety and Policing Act, which now allows a chief of police to suspend a police officer without pay. There is a criteria that has to be met, you know, because we have to be mindful of our charter, right? Our charter of rights in terms of being innocent to proven guilty. So you're taking someone's livelihood away from them while they haven't been found guilty of anything. But there is a criteria now, and really to paraphrase that criteria, it's actions of an officer when they were not engaged in their duty, in their lawful duty, so outside of work. And again, there's a whole host of criteria that must be met before a chief can suspend without pay. But it's a step in the right direction. I can tell you, I've been in a number of discussions as a deputy chief with the chief, and there's been many times under the Police Services Act where we felt that this would be appropriate if we had the ability to suspend without pay, but unfortunately that option was not available to us. And again, understanding full well that burden on the taxpayer when we have officers that are off for 2, 3, 5, 8 years that are being paid. Again, it upsets us as well, but we also have to be mindful of their charter, our charter obligations and the rights of our officers as well.
Wouldn't it be less expensive though to use some of the money those officers get to pay for a separate call for police officers? Say and put a limit, 3 to 6 months maybe, on how long you can be suspended with pay. And you know, we're going to deal with it through a police investigation unit or something like that, but we're going to deal with it in the next 6 months. I mean, a reasonable time frame, like, especially if it's criminal, as we know. Like, you know, we want our criminals to go directly to jail. All of them, or just some of them? So we need to be very careful. I know there's lots of difficulties, right? But when criminality is involved, drug smuggling into prison, things like that, which is happening, you know, they should, no suspension with pay, in my book, for that, or limited, and let's get these guys professionally dealt with through acceptable process. It's got to be cheaper, it's costing millions.
It does cost considerable amount of money, but again, your point is taken. It would take legislative changes.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's not me.
Go ahead.
A lot of us here are of the boomer generation, and we are a gentler, more passive, kinder generation.
I don't know.
No, what she's trying to say is the police don't get expected.
We are expected when we are driving along and we see a drunk driver who we suspect is a drunk driver. Yes, we have called it in.
Yes.
And, okay, our son was killed by a drunk driver. Okay, so that is something that is very personal to us. Okay? Now, if we see someone, I was driving across the lake, doing the speed, I'm in the driving lane, and this woman goes by me on the side shoulder and passes me. Everybody has become so aggressive. Why? Why aggressive? Nobody can wait, no one can signal your turns. It's a totally different generation.
They're not strong enough.
Yeah, and we could talk about volumes in the city and increased population, which has created sort of slower routes to and from where they have to go, and maybe lack of respect. I'm going to be careful of how we label people, but I can't really tell you why there's an increase or a perceived increase, but
you see it.
We do. Yeah.
Plus, there's no respect for the policing.
You know what?
Well, today is very encouraging. Like today's been very encouraging for us, and our officers more and more, they're younger, and I can't be more proud of the work that they do. For you, sir, I don't think they are fearful. They've grown up knowing that cameras are in their face, but the one thing we would like is body-worn cameras because we know it holds everybody accountable. And it's something that somebody like me might not be used to, but these officers that are under 5 years, which we have a lot of now, they grew up with it. So they're not used to anything different. But I can tell you, when I first got hired here, the difference in respect that a police officer gets from a youth has changed dramatically. But I can't speak to you as to why.
They don't think anything of trouble. You know, you're just someone to argue with.
Yeah. But the key, and we ask our officers, is professionalism, it's transparency. We want accountability. We just ask the accountability to be applied fairly. And to the deputy's point, every single time an individual is caught on camera and does make that mistake, you know, we can't have bad days. Like you're having a bad day, but we have to treat every single person with respect, give them that quality service. It doesn't matter if it's the 13th call the officer's been on. It doesn't matter that they've seen a baby death or a sexual assault. They've got to put that, and they do a great job day in and day out. But the odd time, as you said, it's the odd time. But when that happens, there are mechanisms in place, which is not just internally, but provincially, there's outside agencies that do hold us accountable. So.
Good. Awesome. Well, on behalf of myself and everybody here, and I'm sure more than just the residents here, thank you. I can... Again, I'm fortunate enough to see the both sides. I get to see the bad when we talk in detail about what happens in Ward 14, but I also had an opportunity a couple weeks ago, and I went to visit what they call parade, which happens before everybody goes out. I don't know what time it was, 6 in the morning. Tough for me to, good thing the kids wake me up early. But just to see the dedication around that table, when you see the officers getting ready to go out, talking about what happened the night before, and if I'm saying anything I'm not supposed to, please stop me. But they're not there rolling, like they're into it, they're focused. There's people in that room that are coming in because someone else couldn't make it or pulled off somewhere else. Like the dedication around that room. I know you guys can't see it, but I get to see it, and I can tell you they're trying their best to help us. So I'm grateful anyway. So thank you, and if I know Sergeant Elchin's card is at the back table outside, so please grab one on your way out. So thank you. You guys can and ladies, sorry, can leave. Yes. And just quickly, we'll have Joe from My Matter following up on last town hall's presentation, and then if you have any specific questions, Joe's got a short presentation, then we can get into any other questions that you may have for me. Joe, whenever you're ready, use the mic, get everybody close, they're gonna start wandering.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here again, second town hall in Ward 14. And a thank you to Councillor Spadafora for having us here. For those of you that have been here at the last town hall, we introduced DemTech, which is new technology to enable citizens to engage with their politician on the things that matter. We're called I Matter because in our democracy today, there's a sense that people feel like their voice doesn't matter. Our technology enables you to get your message to your councillor in a way that we can all share the data to see what's happening in the community so that the councillor has the information to make better decisions at council based on what his constituents want. So we'll kind of go through the data based on the last 4 questions that Councillor Spadafora asked his community, and we'll go through them one by one. So the first question, it's quite interesting when I listened to the presentation today. The first question that was raised in your ward was, should the police presence in Ward 14 be increased? So when you hear the conversation that was happening, 64% of the population in this ward thinks that that should happen. It's interesting. Independent of your discussion, we had 14 people that participated in this survey from the last town hall, and 64% of them said that policing should increase. It's interesting. That's kind of the way the conversation occurred. Let's look at the next issue. Now, these are going in order of priority, meaning the issues that got the most responses. So the second one was, should Ward 14 have a bookmobile service? Again, 64% said that, yeah, our ward should have a bookmobile service. So that's a question, and that's data that Councillor Spadafora can take back to the city and begin discussions to say, hey, I have empirical data, meaning real data. This data is obtained by real citizens who have obtained a PIN. A PIN is a code that lets you access the platform that's mailed to you at your home address, proving that you live at that location, not like social media, so that you can engage with these issues. Next issue. So the second most popular issue is, should Ward 14 oppose the city's current encampment protocol? That's a big number. 86% of the constituents, with 15 participants from that town hall, felt that yes, the current encampment protocol should be opposed. Let's go to the next one. And this is the most popular IQ, is, should Ward 14 increase traffic calming measures around schools, parks, and residential uses? That came out, speeding in neighborhoods, that's something that your community wants. In fact, it's a pretty big number. 72% of your population wants that. So what's interesting with iMatter, instead of people talking colloquially, now you can get together, get the data, so that Councillor Spadafora can take that data to City Council to make decisions. What I've heard in many councils across Ontario, oftentimes councillors will say, what's the data behind this decision? Where's the proof? So this is online polling with real people on real issues. Councillor Spadafora is using this because he wants to hear from you. You can still reach him through email, you can still reach him through telephone calls, but through the platform, we can work together to get real good information. So let's stretch this to the extreme. If everyone in the Ward 14 had their say, you would have perfect data, because every resident is verified, and then you would know from the 30,000 constituents what everyone thinks. That's what democracy looks like into the future. So these are your new IQs, and this is what Councillor Spadafora would like. So the first one that was posted today in your community, should there be restrictions within the protocol to limit encampments in certain public areas? So let's look at that question in more detail. On iMatter, we provide you with the issue, some background information, and choices and selections. So that issue, should there be restrictions within the protocol to limit encampments in certain areas, we have some background information. So the background information is, the City of Hamilton has declared a state of emergency related to homelessness, opioid addiction, and mental health. Several factors have led to the increase in encampments across the city, especially in public parks, BIAs, and around local businesses. So when you see the IQs, you will always have some resources, some information that's presented to you on the issue to give you a little more background, but you can always select yes or no. iMatter is designed to provide the structure that people can have a conversation. We don't advocate anything. It's a tool to use so citizens can have their say. So in this way, yes, you can say yes, restrictions on where encampments are allowed should be in place because they pose a threat to public safety, or no, there should be no restrictions on where encampments are allowed on city property as everyone is entitled to access.
Can we ask questions of you, Pat?
Yes, sir.
Do you have a section in here when you do it, you can have, put in opinions to help explain your answer?
Yes, we have rationale. Yes. What happens at the next step, once you have your say, you can see what the councillor thinks as well. And then you can see whether you match in the same way or you differ. And if the councillor picks for example, yes, he has the option to provide rationale as to why he's chosen that.
What about that saying, I may say yes, but I don't agree with the actual statement. I do want to say yes, or I want to say no, but I want to explain why I chose my choice.
That's a great question. Our technology is evolving. In the fall, we will also have rationale for citizens. So what we want to do is we want to go away from what social media is doing and having conversations in different directions, but we will provide some structure where you can provide rationale on this issue. Next. So the second IQ, we call them IQ, issues and questions in our society, is, do you believe the City of Hamilton should spend significant funds on bike lanes?
No.
So let's look at some of the background information. So this is the background. At the request of council, the implementation of the cycling master plan has been accelerated, aiming to double the number of new or improved bike lanes and multi-use pathways over the next 5 years. The plan will cost taxpayers over $60 million. So, yes, the city needs to explore alternative methods of transportation to reduce its carbon footprint. Yes, bike lanes are safer for cyclists. No, bike lanes will create an even greater gridlock of traffic. No, the city needs to invest taxpayer dollars into more pressing infrastructure issues. So by having your say, Councillor Spadafora will get the data, and now he can present, at least from Ward 14's perspective, what his citizens want. That's the power of iMatter, and that's what we're about. Anyone that would like to sign up, you can get your pin here or look for us. It's imatr.org, and we're available, and you will see regular use by Councillor Spadafora as an outreach mechanism to you.
First, more councillors have signed up.
We have a number of councillors we've been talking to, and working with government, it's a slow process.
Has the mayor signed up?
Still looking at it. Yes, Gojo.
Yeah, can you please go back to the slide? The last slide.
The very last one?
The number there can be a little misleading. I think, if my memory serves me right, it's 60 million over 5 years. Some of that money is from the province, and some of that money has already been allocated for the capital projects. Right? So all I'm just saying is it's better to provide the full perspective of the total funds there. Because if you say 60 million, it could be 60 million in 1 year. 60 million. No,
okay, if I could clarify on that. iMatter is digital infrastructure. We've been recognized in Europe. We're in Manitoba now. We're spreading across the country. Our infrastructure is there for people that have information to place it on our site so that people can engage it. As far as these IQs are concerned, this is information that we obtained from Councillor Spadafora. So they create the IQs, they create the choices, and then we look at it to make sure that I don't think Mike would ever ask you, Are you guys interested in partying until 4 o'clock in the morning every night? So we look at the content, and then if the content is appropriate, we publish it on our site. So in this case, the information comes from the council office. We have MPs. We have a very significant MP that's going to be having his first town hall in August. So we're really excited about that. We have an MPP that's joining us as well. The content that they create will be posted. So we can't change the content. It's the conversation that they want to have with their constituents. Yes, sir.
The point you just made is an excellent point, because data you data will affect how people vote and what they do. So you have to have full facts. Put it in 2 lines the best you can. And what you said was absolutely correct. The problem is, as a taxpayer, I don't care where the money's coming from. It's too much.
Yeah.
You know, but that, you're absolutely correct, is that every one of those statements can't be worded in such a way that gets the answer you want.
Correct. And the way we deal with that is, if you could show the slide again. If you remember, I mentioned there are these resources that give you information on the issue. In this information, there could be additional clarifications. The resources are available for the public to also post information. So if you have information that is maybe expands a little more on this, you are welcome to post that information. This is a collective where we gather all the information from all the sources that we can, as long as they're on topic and that they're from credible sources.
One last comment.
Yes,
we have the councillor here, so he can give us the breakdown of the 60 million.
It's federal money, it's not provincial money. There's federal money that's allocated. Out of the 60 million, I don't have the figures, but I would say it is a extremely small portion of the 60 million that's covered by the federal government. What we had here was, this was a master plan that was approved with the money, but what happened was we shrunk the timeline from here to here. And that's why the increase. So I believe it was either a 10 or 30 year span where the cycling master plan was approved. So when you take that money, and say it was 30, you spread that 60 million over 30 years, it's not that much money over 30 years. When you take it and you contract it down to 5 years, and even if the federal government's given us $10 million, which I don't believe they're anywhere near that, but let's say it's 10, that brings that number down to 50. That's $10 million a year. Even if they give us $20 million, which they did, takes that number to 40. So almost $8 million a year on bike lanes. So, and again, resources are there, and that's the biggest thing about, for me, that I like, committee reports. So the reports we get, they're public. So when they come to GIC or they come to Public Works, they're public reports. Now when you go there, those reports will be there. So you'll be able to fact check, you'll be able to say, well, hold on a sec, you're saying it's this. I look at the committee report, it's all there. Right, so everything, every staff report, anything that staff bring forward with the data, where it's happening, how it's happening, where the money's coming from, whether it's federally, provincially, municipal, tax levy, non-tax levy, reserve, all that information comes in the resources, right? So, yeah, you have to do a little bit of, I would say, work if you want to dive into the details, for sure. But that's why those resources, it's not just, hey, it's this, say yes or no. And then as we add the rationale piece in, that Joe was talking about that's coming, it allows you to expand on your answer. Hey, councillor, yeah, 60 million over 5 years, I think that's maybe too much, but I would support it over X amount of years. I would support it in certain areas, and here's why. And that's why the rationale is important, because sometimes just saying yes, I want bike lanes, doesn't really give the opportunity to give your actual,
so let me just phrase that one for bike lanes.
Sure.
The whole concept originally with bike lanes is to try to protect cyclists who have the right to basically go down a path of some type to save lives on the roads. Right? Let's face it, that's really what we're trying to do. With the advent of how many bike lanes we put in some areas really disrupted traffic, are we actually seeing a decrease in accidents with bikes? Are we seeing a same thing? Are we seeing an increase? Because I'll tell you right now, I actually saw down Stonehenge that you just come all those stupid foliage in, an older couple, maybe my age, literally not going down, but they're still going down the middle of the street around the bend that nobody can see in front of them.
On the bike lane front, I wouldn't say that bike lanes were only used to protect cyclists. I think that's part of it. It's also used to try to promote active, living and another source of transportation. So it's not strictly, we're going to do bike lanes because we don't want anybody to get hurt. It's part of it, but there's more to it than that. What I would say is, I think it's getting worse.
Thank you.
But not because of the bike lanes. It's getting worse because I think, as it was mentioned earlier, the style of driving in the city is becoming worse. It's aggressive drivers. It's drivers, we had a meeting, I think it was last week, where they talked about a few incidents in Ancaster where there was targeted driving towards cyclists.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a bike lane is not going to change that behavior, nor is it going to protect the cyclist. But for the normal driver, or at least if that's the way to call him, someone who's willing to share the road, it gives cyclists
On the other hand, I'm so very aggressive cyclist. I had my little dog down through that pathway underneath the link, and two cyclists came barreling through there. If I hadn't pulled them off in the grass, it would have killed them.
And you can say that, and you can say that about everything. I've been on the Bruce Trail with my kids, 3 kids, me and my wife, and I've seen cyclists respect pedestrians. And I've seen cyclists not do. Same with drivers. Not every driver is an aggressive driver. Not every driver is a bad driver. But you're going to get that in everything, right? Not everyone's a good councillor. Some bad ones, some good ones. You got lucky.
So,
I've seen that. 50-50.
So,
anyways, Joe, sorry.
thank you. No problem.
There. Go ahead.
So our democracy depends on our voice. If you want the police budget to go up, if you want bike lanes to be reduced, if you want whatever, you need to have your say. iMatter is technology that allows you to have your say so that the people in the positions that can actually do something can have data and move forward with your thoughts. So in closing, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to also thank Mike's wonderful staff, Christine D.G. Tomaso, Sydney Waxman, Mike Maniti, and my staff. Sam Maniti? Sam Maniti, Francis. We have Jeff Toole. And thank you, and we look forward to seeing you at the next town hall. Yes, sir.
One final question. So the PIN number is a great idea. In my household, there's 3 of us no.
Correct, 3 pins.
Thank you.
Because you might not agree with your wife. I don't agree with my wife about certain things, so I don't tell her that, do you? I don't tell her that. She's sitting in the back and watching me, and I'm in trouble. But
This guy knows my wife. I have to be careful. We'll report backwards, so that's all.
So the key.
Talk about the cost, though, Joe.
Yeah,
I think everybody needs to know how much they got to pay.
The cost is free of charge. Okay, so this is available to your counselor, free of charge as well, if he hosts these IQs. If he doesn't host IQs and asks you what you think and doesn't engage his constituents, then he gets a fat bill. So that's how our system works. He works with us to empower citizens to have their say. And we also have a new feature coming out, and that'll be out at the end of August. People that ran in elections previously will also be able to engage the platform. We have political parties that are not elected, but if you wanted to know what this official party candidate thinks about the issue, you can engage him as well. Our democracy is about conversations and with real people. And unfortunately, we've kind of went in a world of social media where nobody knows who anyone is. And iMatter is here because you matter.
You know what I would really like to see after we do all this? Find out how he voted against how we wanted it.
The data's available. Stay tuned.
And you could find, probably not as easy as iMatter will be able to put it on the site, but that information is available. Yeah. It's, again, not an easy process, but you definitely could find that. And hopefully, this is what I don't have to do. Joe's going to do it for me with iMatter, and then I don't have to do it. You can just go on iMatter and find out the way I voted. And yes, sometimes I don't vote the way you want me to.
That's it.
That's done. I'm out of here.
Thank you, everyone. Have a safe drive home. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Mike.
You got a question for me? Oh, you didn't see? Joe, they want to talk to you.